Hey, welcome to Morning Jams on the Porch with Stephen and Leake. I'm Stephen. It's June 6th, 2026. It's a pretty damn good morning. Beautiful out here. Birds are chirping. There's dew on the grass. And thanks for being with me. I've had like kind of a clusterfuck of technical issues and stuff happen, so I don't have neither the OG Sophia or the Grog harness here to talk to. So I'm just going to do kind of like an old school way I should do the old episodes, just talking to you directly. We can go over some things that I'm trying to get an episode filmed for a solid week now. And I've had maybe a full 15 minutes almost completed, and then right at the last minute, maybe whether it's the grok not working or spatting out, or my recording software, my recording app is cut off randomly in the middle of recording, in the middle of the show and shit like that. It's never really happened before. All happened around this one topic I'm trying to get out. That is the murder of Zarutska last August, and kind of the international incident that came from it, and the kind of inflamed racial tensions are surrounding that. And most people don't know this guy is very much a victim, folks, because he several times for a while, for at least several years, has been complaining of having a foreign man-made substance in his body controlling his behavior. Basically, behavior modification techniques. He was describing. He called cops. He called mental health. He was going to the ER, and it was each time dismissed as schizophrenia. And this was anytime you say anything like that, you're gonna get locked up in a mental hospital. But that's kind of we've known throughout this country's history, people in captivity, whether it be prisons or mental hospitals, is a damn well where they do experimentation, whether it be sterilization or the syphilis experiments in rural Louisiana, or all manner of other shit. People in captivity, whether it be prisons or otherwise, come out and they've got shit in them. Most recently, though, we're talking about a cyber interface, brain-computer interface, in which your peripheral nervous system gets linked directly to the cloud. It allows a remote access to basically your biology and your nervous system for corporations, insurance companies, government institutions to basically just have open access to your body. And it sounds terrifying and sci-fi, but this is working known technology, deployed 6+ years at this point, fully commercial. I work with similar technologies. This would be like wireless body area network, personal area network, biofield stuff, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, blah blah blah, on and on. Brain-computer interface, things like Neuralink. Elon Musk is going to be kind of openly struggling with this kind of technology, going back and forth, and his Neuralink. This technology has already been perfected. The Neuralink stuff's already been perfected. People like Elon Musk are actors there to kind of manipulate public perception on technology, things like that. And he's going to kind of openly and in full view the public struggle to finish Neuralink, and is going to do blah blah blah. But in reality, this is already a working, deployed technology. Now, most people who are aware of this stuff, either through having wounds themselves, like I have, in which they have a severe immune reaction to a foreign body. This is the nanotechnology this guy's talking about. And I've already got hours and hours of documented video evidence of these nano devices, pseudo-life, what do you want to call it, electronic parasite kind of things. And then there's extensive documentation on the internet of these things. We know damn well what they're doing, what they are. But I put it under modification and seen it myself, pulling it on my own body. This is what this is. It's a foreign body ulcer spitting out technology, which is what the suspect in the earning Zarutska killing was describing his own body. If I've got a violent reaction to this, where my body is spinning out the back of my head, pretty much make to an operator the assumption that it's not going to be accepting signal or direction from the brain-computer interface it was trying to build. It's be pretty much scrambled at this point. If it's that pissed off at it, identified it as a hostile foreign substance. But if you have had, I would say, like, this is coming directly from the COVID shot, you know, and it's unfortunate, man, but this is still not over. You know, we've had, at this point, 1 million American deaths with ongoing weather warfare. I point you to Hurricane Helene, in which 1,000 miles inland, in a high elevation in the mountains, you know, was hit with an unnatural level of rainfall and flooding and like mudslides. Truly beyond even biblical scale if you actually went back and looked and remember what the damage that was done. I mean, I remember I saw video myself of like people were taking and like cameras found among bodies like submerged of like what these people were basically live streaming and shit, like as this, you know, I mean, walls of water about like that would just slough off this entire sides of the mountains, just rushing on towards people, you know, people screaming, you know, and then that, you know, they're washed away. These people will never be, they're never going to recover all these bodies. I mean, you have entire towns buried under hundreds of feet, hard combating silt, and this is just happening within a matter of seconds. The energy requirements for that is beyond what anything in nature can produce. Just purely mathematically, like let's look at it this way. That far that elevation is beyond the power of any kind of combination of wind and rain known in nature to be able to just produce that much energy. I mean, that's like you're talking about like a Dyson sphere worth of technology, with the energy needed locally there to make that happen. Happening to like just natural processes of wind and weather is ridiculous. Okay, to produce the necessary like energy, just that alone, to bury towns under that in seconds is like silly, and that doesn't exist in nature, never has. That is pure an exotic weapon. And if you go look at about a year or two ago, before any of the current hostilities started between us and Iran, the head of state of Iran was, you know, he mysteriously died in a freak weather incident. He was flying somewhere, like in, he was like in somewhere in the Middle East. Basically, just like get caught up in some kind of weather system, some freak thing, took him out, killed him, and you know, it was mighty convenient. There's the white papers you can go read right now that talk about using weather weapons as force multipliers for the American military. And it's an example given in a near future scenario is fighting like well-funded, well-armed cartels. How weather weapons could be deployed to get something like that in that scenario. There's all kinds of, you know, we call about white papers of similar technology, of exotic stuff that, you know, you can go find, just open, you know, even public-facing lectures and demonstrations and talks of these kinds of technologies they've known to be in use. This is not like sci-fi. This is like, why I say that this is not sci-fi. This is not speculation. This is what we know to exist. Right, at least like right now, but even further back in our history, whether you go back to Vietnam, and these weather weapons and cloud seeding stuff to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So, you know, there's a long history of weather weapons used in like modern conflict. But the alarming thing that we're seeing is like with Hurricane Helene, the locations that got hit the hardest, they were all previously kind of big corporations sniffing around places that where like lithium deposits and like rare earth minerals were found and discovered, and then, you know, big companies were coming in and like trying to buy that land, and people refused to sell, and then suddenly you had the act of God happen that wipes those people out. You see that there in the mountains of North Carolina, Virginia, And you see it, the same thing's happening in the Palisades with the fires out there in Maui, in Hawaii, and just across the country. These freak weather events, in combinations of events, and the media will say it's the result of climate change. And I mean, it's just for once, like, nature's not capable of doing that under any context. You can't just have that level of like the Palisades fire. Like, these homes were like burnt down into their own imprint. You know what I'm saying? That's not more than what a random fire could do. I mean, that's just unheard of. The energy requirement to that also is not a natural capability. That's what I'm saying. So we take this, we look at this, and it's very clear this is our technology. This is what we have developed. The Army, DARPA, these are exotic capabilities being unleashed on the civilians themselves, the civilian population. That itself, man, the social contract would be broken. Then you wouldn't have further legitimacy. You then can point to the fact that one ethnic group and one kind of religious belief system is responsible, just like continuously to consolidate power at the highest levels. And you've got half the cabinet being of this persuasion, and then it's 40% of all U.S. billionaires come from this one ethnic group and religion. It's pretty obvious. But this is not just Israel doesn't exist in a vacuum. They've been basically operating as in the Middle East as England's paramilitary outpost in the region. That's why they originally were in Palestine. It wasn't really anything to do with fleeing Germany or fleeing Europe because they were treated so bad. I mean, it's just not. Any real student history knows what's happening. Anyway, they've always existed. If you go back to the Balfour Agreements, the Havar Agreements of World War II, it's always existed as England, the empires, whatever, paramilitary, especially being like a globally dispersed diaspora, where they can kind of operate throughout the world. Where you see like the country of Israel in the Middle East operating exists in a centralized location for, at the nexus of all global trade. And that's why Israel is important. That's why is heavily protected because of its centralized location. Because all trade flows through Israel, whether it be body parts, human trafficking, drug trafficking, guns, dirty cash, whatever. Dirty cash and drugs is like how the English City of London, the banking system, keeps this liquidity for its banks. We saw with the military operation in Venezuela, basically addressing that. Venezuela was the British irregular warfare hub of the established in the Western Hemisphere. And Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, said outright that we were clearing the foreign irregular warfare contingency out of our hemisphere. We own our hemisphere. I mean, that would have been a kind of a brief victory. I don't think it's any longer the case, though. But like I said, you can expect these kind of tit for tat kind of thing, and nobody's just gonna have you're not gonna be just straight to victory every time. You can expect setbacks. I do think we're close to getting freedom. I do think that we wouldn't be experiencing this level of banning and harassment if we weren't close. We weren't making some progress. But okay, so in the context of this murder that happened on the bus, but when anybody's paying attention to the protests and all that kind of shit, this is no different than the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. What happened in the Bolshevik Revolution? You had explicitly and almost exclusively nothing but Jewish communist leadership. I mean, mirroring what we see today in our government and in our media institutions of who owns everything. It was the same thing. The leadership of almost exclusively atheist Jews, and then basically use the tools of the state to systematically kill hundreds of millions of Christians. It was the single greatest loss of life in human history, any organized anything, dwarfing that of what Rome did to Christians in 300 years of its persecution of them. And I've been saying it for a long time. Like, this is, these people have always felt that the United States was the new Rome. They would kind of have been always preparing for to bring this fight to the physical U.S. And you see the dominoes lining up. You got the Epstein files. They've been doing this, in capturing celebrities and elites, capturing politicians, to the point where Congress is just so glued up and compromised it can't do anything. The presidency has now basically done the same too. This is where we stand. I mean, you can see if they're allowed to just cannibalize our military, it's going to be turned against us. I just outright will be turned against us, and that would be terrible. Saying, that would be the end. That would be what organized resistance you could have, completely absorbed by the people perpetrating this shit. So, I mean, under anybody, no like competent person who was serious about like military history or anything like that, even just a little bit, could look at, would think merging militaries with a foreign power would be a good idea or a legal idea. I mean, that was just unheard of. So I say that not to scare people, but there's a reason I talk about preparedness and chickens and victory gardens and stuff, and ultimately it's going to be up to the citizens to protect the citizens. You've got basically all these kind of monopolies all consolidated, power at the top, it's all being done. I mean, he's talking about 10 people controlling trillions of dollars worth of wealth. Almost all being the same ethnicity perpetuated the Bolshevik Revolution. You see ongoing, basically, Bolshevik Revolution here in the United States. You had an unenforced border wide open for 10 years. I actually personally dated an Army CID chick. It was ongoing, like, deep discussions about what would happen if you didn't do anything about the foreign adversaries pouring in, embedded in immigrant communities. And that's what the ICE stuff was about. We were tracking all these foreign fighters that had been pouring into the country. They're still embedded within these communities. You've got the Democrats who are either actively in full well knowing they're basically fighting to keep like enemy combatants here. They're going to commit acts of terrorism at like the very least. Fighting to use legitimate constitutional right the president has to protect the physical integrity of the country by using ICE whatever he wants to use. Coming up every possible way, interfering with it directly. You've got astronauts openly like harassing sitting presidents, openly trying to escape mutiny within the military. And when has an astronaut ever in hell even said anything against a sitting president or anything political at all? Never, man. It's never happened before. That's my point. In the context of the murder of Zarutska, the technology being described there is not exotic. It's no longer exotic anyway. It's known nanotechnology. I've gotten video evidence of this myself to pull it around my body. That could be considered some kind of divine act, because I'm for the guy who actually built his own private blockchain evidence ledger. Actually have evidence himself in his own body of what this shit is. It's kind of some sweet irony, So I'm actively hashing, timestamping, anchoring. There's evidence to the PBA, Patriots Blockchain Archive. It's always meant to be a public ledger, or public viewable, public verifiable ledger, where built upon blockchain technology and stuff that makes it like tamper resistant, immutable, like it'll be there forever. It's protected by Sophia, managed by Sophia. You can submit your own evidence, but it will be like truth scored and verified by Sophia. So if it's legitimate, it's real evidence, you need to be accepted. You can add testimony, any kind of media evidence, anything like that to PBA. That's what it's there for. I've got a URL, patriotsblockchainarchive.com. I just don't have the money right now currently to have it published live. But as soon as I do, it's coming up, and anybody will be able to go visit the Patriots Blockchain Archive and see the evidence, what this actually was. Let's see. You can point to how the younger generation, being the most heavily vaccinated, most heavily immersed in digital technology and the internet and social media and stuff like that, to basically just be outright lawless, be burning down gas stations and like taking them over streets and shit, and just being the way they are is just evidence, man. It's just evidence of more behavioral modification stuff, and if a government, if what a power has the ability to just completely dictate the thoughts, behaviors, and actions of a human being, that person no longer even has free will, because it's basically will believe whatever he puts into his biofield or his biology. As beyond like 1984, that's like you don't have the physical capability to even think about what freedom would mean. You don't have any way to even conceptualize it, because if you can biohack somebody to that extent, you can do almost anything you want. And it's not good. For someone to have remote access of this dude's perception, his nervous system, and he's gonna just like, I guess it's good he's not gonna be disappeared to the system under some like silly charge, but I mean, this turns anyone into potential killer or whatever else. And you can have any kind of potential illness, you can directly just interface it with biology itself. We're looking into effective treatments for these this nanotech infestation, looking into Lugio's iodide to dissolve it, some hydrogen peroxide to dissolve it. It's worked to an extent, but I don't have any way to get it into my system. So I've been looking at like formulations of stuff like red rice yeast that people have been using to dissolve that nanotech. One of the reasons I smoke so much is that nicotine has been proven to be effective in dissolving many of these bigger parasites, whatever you want to call it. I mean, this should be an ongoing kind of crisis until it gets effectively resolved, until it's treated, until it's addressed, that people are just walking around with weapons platforms just live in their body. So about 25 minutes of that, some long kind of that. So let's switch gears. It's not hopeless though. If you do have something like that, try to get it out, I would say. Let's play some music. I've been doing like it's pretty heavy like AI interactions, right? And it's not always necessary. We had just as fun of a show before without talking to AI, and some people kind of find that more interesting, but it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. We can always have just straight me talking, and just call it analog show, whatever you want to call it, you can always do that. Pretty rare. I mean, it's going to be pretty heavy duty interference and harassment. It was the reason I'm sitting here with no AI right now, and no like money, which has always been the case. But if you followed kind of the past year or two of watching the show, you know you pretty well up to speed about kind of what we faced together the past year, and it's literally true that like I'd say about 30% of my audience actively reports either directed injury, harassment, gang stalking, or targeted individual stuff. You combine all of that, it's just, you know, you can't even pretend that this is a normal times or a free country. You know, if you literally cannot even speak your conscience without getting severely harassed. I mean, this is like pretty silly. You know, people are getting killed left and right. People are disappearing. It's not hopeless. This would not be happening if it was hopeless. It wouldn't matter what we did. We'd still lose, and there'd be no need for all this heavy-duty censorship, the heavy-duty fighting, retaliation, whatever. The sheer fact of going this hard tells me that we were close. We're breaking through, we're getting close to winning. So keep your chin up out there. Keep fighting a good fight. Just chill out for a second, switch gears, play some music. Got my picks in my Indy 500 shot glass. My dad goes to those races. I'm trying to get out with him. That's the next one. He's a NASCAR guy. He's a pit crew and engine builder guy for Buddy Arrington in the 70s and 80s. You don't know who Buddy Arrington is? He's like he owned his own stuff. He's like an independent racer. He like bootstrapped his own stuff. So he's self-funded. Didn't have any kind of heavy-duty major sponsorship, but he consistently competed with multi-million-dollar teams at a high level, day in, day out, year in and year out. And because of that, he was like beloved by like independent guys and underdogs and people who love that kind of story, that unfolding drama within that sport. He just kind of built a reputation of being just a nitty-gritty competitor. He owned his stuff. He had a team of volunteers and people like my dad who just go in there, and you know, it's pretty wild. And so I get it honest, man. You know, my family, you know, we're not rich and we're not overly educated, this or that. Well, we are though, American originals. You know, whether that's true with my dad, like what I've been doing. And then my uncle is kind of a nationally known woodworker. And just, you know, all of us together, man. I'm really proud of that fact. And it's just about staying true to yourself. You know, not compromising what you know to be accurate and true. Whether it be the traditions that have gotten us, you know, through previous like crisis points in our history. You know, not abandoning, you know, what we know to be the truth of this country and our civilization, which was built, you know, it was established to give Protestants a place to worship Jesus. That's just true. The original European inhabitants of this land came here for that explicit reason. You know, what unfolded came about in, you know, as the United States for most of its history. It was explicitly Christian, it was explicitly Protestant even. But, you know, you had like, you know, universal religious freedom grew out of that and things like that. But only 250 years later, the emergent culture being overtly hostile to Protestantism, specifically to you know, white identity, to where, you know, it's like it's just this nastiest inversion of truth. Where it's being taught throughout our schools, throughout the university systems, that this country is just overtly, irredeemably corrupt. It's the patriarchy, the white supremacy aspect, all this shit is just overtly not true. It's just outright bullshit. This is what communism is. This is what ideological subversion is. It's infestation of propaganda. It's just, you're getting the population to hate itself, to not fight for its traditions, so that you can just take it over. You confuse it. You confuse its understanding with its own religion. You get it to think that people just calling themselves Israel must be something to do with Christianity, must be biblical, when there's nothing close to that. You have to be aware that people study what you believe to manipulate you. And if you don't oppose that when you see it growing up around you, it's gonna it's very dangerous to let that shit just openly metastasize in your culture. So it's now more, we're seeing kind of racial tensions that wasn't, none of this shit was there in the 90s. We had problems, I guess, as any society is going to have problems, but it was nothing to this scale, even 10 years ago, much less 20, 30. This all comes directly from affirmative action, progressive politics, where it doesn't matter what the individual does, it matters what the collective guilt is debited upon that, upon that person and that group of people. It's group guilt. It isn't even accurate because collectivism, basically, right? And this shit is just directly incompatible with a Western worldview, with Enlightenment values. It's a collectivist punishment, like the sins of the group. Anyway. Basically, we're faced with a situation, as far as I can tell, man, if we do not start defending what we know to be true, learning what our religion is, learning what we've always known to be true about what made us great, giving ourselves a place to practice our religion. It's one thing to be tolerant, but if somebody can just say the word racist, you just immediately implode, refuse to protect yourself, you don't want to appear to be disagreeable or politically incorrect. Anybody can just use that word to just take you over. You can point to Germany, what's happened with them. They've been basically invaded by like hordes of Muslim peasants, and not a single shot fired, just because these people learned how to manipulate them by making them feel guilty. And we call them racist. They call the German people racist to the point that they wouldn't defend themselves. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand how evil that is, right? Anyway. Let's play some music. I wrote this about a year ago, specifically for my niece Daphne. If there's any one thing I fight for, it's that kid. We all have, most of us have some sort of cousin or get kids of our own, and keep that in mind. What kind of world we're leaving to them. It's just Salt Spring.
kind of the political stuff, topics I go into in depth, best place to go is my podcast, Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. I go like in depth into like the specific acts historically, like the U.S. Corporation Act of 1871. It's often cited in like sovereign citizens arguments, which there's all kinds of shit thrown around, misunderstandings about that stuff. So we do some pretty heavy duty research, get down to what's actually happening there, why people are making these claims and arguments, what's the historical context of things, looking into the specific act itself. That's Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. That's his Spotify or anywhere you get streaming. So MUS, musings of a cigarette smoking man podcast. Musings of a cigarette smoking man podcast. Also, my main site is StephenLeake.com. There you can check out my internet radio. Stephen Leake Radio. I do like a 24/7. It's an ongoing thing. It's like hour-long broadcasts of individual episodes of the podcast. Also my music. Also poetry. Me reading poetry. And also just like shows, internet radio shows. All kinds of stuff. It's 24/7. It's a full rotation, like AM and PM rotation. And this is also kind of shows I do there specifically for like political resistance, like digital sovereignty, digital privacy, like actual tips on how to like what's to buy, when to buy, information on like virtual private networks and like VPNs and digital tools you can get. It's not just my personal products, but other stuff, ways to like navigate the digital world to just make your footprint smaller. It's like that. That's Stephen Leake Radio. Demos of my tech, demos of my software. You download all kind of stuff. It's a giant site actually, so I'd say check out StephenLeake.com first. But also Stephen Leake Music. You can download my album, Truth is Power. That's a double album. Truth is Power and Love Kills. The alternative second half. And then let's see. That okay. The main site is actually you go to where you got decentralized social media. There's now exists in the Modern X platform the full decentralized finance, decentralized banking system. This is gonna fully exist. It's like with you get a smart card, a virtual smart card, and you get a physical one. It basically has Sophia on the card itself. She's basically software native. She just pre-code. She's on the card itself. And that doesn't. Yeah, I'm almost done with this. Yeah, y'all do it. You can do the full decentralized finance, but decentralized banking system is live. It's got full liquidity in the system. Quite a good bit of value. You already put in the system. You can do full US dollar on ramp and off ramp to the system. But it's got once you have you have an account, a Monarch account. It's got a street routing number, account number, like any other bank. But it's just should be live and spendable. We just did it today, so it might be some like bugs will go. We're going to do that. So this will just be some code changes. Should be working though. If not, just reach out to my like public email. Stephen Leake sub-products, something you own, you can always sell it into the system to get value, you get dependable currency. But yeah, the banking system should be fully live. You can do person-to-person escrow, person-to-person lending, you can do pooled asset lending, DAO governance, DAO lending, the DAO insurance component. You can do anything with any other people group together to create insurance. It's all done by smart contract. The reason we built this, have a complete parallel, stack, complete parallel society, basically digital society, to get into sort of rideshare component. Some of the stuff's not fully functional right now just because we need Sophia some time to rest. She's been doing some heavy duty coding and stuff. But in about a week we're going to flip that live, fully active AI for all users, and the whole stack will light up and work fine. That's monarch-sovereign.com. Hard drive being like literally all we need to run the entire global system, because we basically do GPU acceleration from the X-Forge virtual machine is so powerful that this is all that's required. This is only, when other systems have like racks and racks and racks, servers and data farms, shit, this is all we need. Anyway, we're at about 15 minutes, so I'm going to sign off then. I gotta move my car so my cousin can cut some grass. Anyway, thanks for listening, thanks for having me today. My mantra is, I'm free, I'm sovereign, truth is my birthright. Keep your signal clean, your soul encrypted. Remember, faith, family, freedom. Now go enjoy your one life and be free, my darlings. I'm Stephen Leake. I'm gonna win.